You are listening to On the Record with Tiffany, where we come together to figure out some of the world's problems and see if we can address it in a positive manner that brings people together and doesn't divide. So today we are talking about equity, and we're relating it back to one of my favorite groups, the Negro Baseball League and SAAACAM. Woohoo! So SAAACAM has a pop-up event that's coming up, and we have the wonderful Dr. Van Hoy, professor of history at St. Mary's, who's going to talk to us a little bit about history and unsung heroes. She's a late bloomer in this history game. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Van Hoy.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and greetings to everybody, your listeners. We are so excited to be partnering with SAAACAM for the very first time. Our first project together here this Thursday is a shoot with KSAT television station. Reporter Devin Clark has invited SAAACAM and St. Mary's to present their findings on the history of the Negro League, especially the San Antonio Black Aces, but the whole history of Black baseball in San Antonio. My students have been working hard for 2 weeks. They're so excited. They're excited that I'm here on your radio show. They're excited that they're going to meet their SAAACAM partners on Thursday. And so I'm speaking on their behalf. Thank you very much for this opportunity to bring this history to people in San Antonio.
So, we're happy to hear about history, because if we don't understand our history, and if we don't examine it and dissect it, then we're destined to repeat the same mistakes of the past. So, I love that you have students working on this. So, what was your goal and outcome you were looking for when you decided to bring St. Mary's students in on SAAACAM?
SAAACAM has been working hard, very long time, telling a very big story, and it all started last February when we went down to SAAACAM to see their excellent exhibit on Black cowboys. We went as a history club. Amber Anderson is a former St. Mary's history major, my student, and we just wanted to see what they were doing, and we were blown away. They are doing beautiful work. They are recovering Black cemeteries, African American cemeteries. They are doing so much to lead us that we said, well, how can we help? And how can, as I said to Director Jarmon, the point, our hope was that the East Side and the West Side can team up to center the history of African Americans in San Antonio.
So, East Side and West Side, historically, people tell us that those two sides are separate, that Black people are on one side, Hispanic people are on the other side. Tell me what you all have found.
We have found, and this was a surprise to me, I'm new to this history, that of the 5 public housing projects inaugurated in 1940, and here Mrs. Roosevelt herself pushed these projects when they were threatened to stall out. Of the 5 housing projects, 2 were designated, these are segregated housing projects in 1940, 2 were designated for African American residents. One, the one that we're focusing on in our project with SAAACAM, is the Lincoln Courts on the West Side. And we had the good fortune of interviewing Mr. Jarmon this past week. My graduate student, Harold Johnson, interviewed Mr. Jarmon and his growing up on the West Side as an African American and the thriving Black-owned pharmacies, Black-owned restaurants, Black-owned grocery stores that were all on the West Side. It's a very important story to tell, Tiffany, because at this very moment, my colleagues in the Mexican American community in San Antonio are working on a museum called Museo del West Side, which is focusing on the Mexican American history of the West Side, which is a wonderful thing, but they are in danger of making invisible the African American history of the West Side. So fortunately, SAAACAM agreed to partner with us so that we can tell the whole history of the West Side.
Why is it that we have such a disconnect like that? Because it seems like every time I look at this, I'm like, boy, in terms of colonialization, we're still dealing with some of the remnants of that, with ethnic groups feeling like it's all or nothing. We gotta present our view and not not include everybody that should be included. There's not a reason not to include. If we're doing a museum about the history of a particular area, it should include all parts of the history of that particular area.
Well, actually, the tragic thing, in my view, is that if the folks who set power up in a particular place, say San Antonio, are invested in everybody on the bottom fighting each other and thinking each other is the enemy. And then if you can make them fight each other, then your hands are clean and the whole system reproduces itself and you don't even have to.
And that is so wrong.
Wrong. So, but it's easy to fix.
Yeah,
it is.
Just,
I'm a Latin Americanist. I'm a Mexican American scholar, and I'm going to focus on African American history. And so are my students. And together, we're just going to redefine the history of San Antonio as everybody.
I love that, Dr. Van Hoy, because I kind of feel like that's what we're trying to do with this show is say, hey, you don't have to be the definition of whatever people think a conservative is or whatever people think a liberal is. You have to define yourself as an American, and let's define what that means. And that means working together. That means respecting other people's history and including one another in solutions. Not trying to take the credit for one group when it deserves to be there. I mean, if we look at civil rights, we see that African Americans led the charge in many areas of civil rights, right? So to try and diminish that is childish, but at the same time, we had others that marched with us. We had women, we had Caucasians, we had Hispanic people. So we don't. We include everybody that marched with us. We're always like, there's this group. So, you have to, at some point, people who have a voice need to stand up and use it. So I thank you for doing that. And just saying, we don't have to define these things so narrowly.
Yeah, Pigeonhole is a tiny claustrophobic space. So let's just hop on out and hold hands and get the job done.
Exactly, because it takes more than one person and more than one group. There's nobody, when in my day job I fight kidney disease. Well, we have the same ills, all these different groups that are we have the same goal in mind, which is to eradicate this disease. Yet sometimes it can feel like there actually isn't enough space for everybody to be there, and that's just not true. You have to simply extend the olive branch and say, hey, I'd like you at our event. This is important. Patients are sick. Even if you and everybody that works for you came to San Antonio and started doing screenings side by side, elbow by elbow, elbow to elbow, we cannot find all of the people in San Antonio who have kidney disease.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we've got these monumental problems that require that we work together.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for that work. There's a good friend of mine who just died even after a kidney transplant, and I'm still mourning him. So your work is huge. We're all feeling his loss. Thank you for that work.
thank you for saying that, and I'm sorry for your friend's loss. It is something that we fight daily. I've lost 9 family members to kidney disease. I have 3 who have CKD now. I was just talking to my mother. Since COVID has struck, we've lost 4 in our family to COVID-19, all related to who had kidney disease, some stage of CKD. It's a devastating disease, and we will fight it, and we're doing so here, coming up with ideas that are outside of the box. But tell us a little bit more about what's going on with St. Mary's and SAAACAM.
St. Mary's and SAAACAM, we're committing a full year to a project called Black in the Barrio, which is this historical preservation of African American experience on the West Side. And this KSAT shoot on Thursday, and the pop-up exhibit that Director Jarmon is bringing, which you helped sponsor in the airport for Juneteenth. That's part of the programming. And so thanks to that exhibit and to this event on Thursday, my students are going to be able to learn the history that you guys have already produced and add their granito de arena, as we say in Spanish, their little grain of sand to give a gift, to donate their research to SAAACAM.
I love that.
How exciting.
Deborah, so how do you feel about this? All of this excitement is happening at SAAACAM under your leadership, Director Jarmon.
So,
and don't play it down, because that's the truth.
See,
you have made so many wonderful connections for SAAACAM throughout the community, and I'm saying that as somebody that you've connected to, but also because I talk to other people that you've made a connection with, and they're just like, wow, SAAACAM is doing the most amazing work preserving African American culture and history.
And Tiffany and Dr. Van Hoy, we are extremely excited about that opportunity. And I have to go back to the visionaries of SAAACAM, the founders, Everett Fly and George Frederick. It's actually their vision that they've entrusted with myself, the current board of directors, and the staff.
So, Deborah, you got a pop-up event coming.
We do, and we're so excited, Tiffany, to be partnering with the Texas Kidney Foundation.
Yay!
The San Antonio Missions baseball team.
I love
and
missions.
It was in conjunction with research that was provided by ourselves and the Institute of Texan Cultures, which is a University of Texas San Antonio institution, and also Texas A&M. Their Methods of Historical Research class, a student from the 2020 class provided research. So our pop-up event is Thursday at Pittman Sullivan Park from 11:30 to 1:30, and a piece of history about Pittman Sullivan Park. It was actually built by the Pittsburgh Pirates for their spring training.
Wow!
And San Antonio and the Pittsburgh Pirates didn't get along. So they left, and it became the jewel of kind of pickup and Negro League baseball. So that is where the Negro teams played back in the day, right at Pittman Sullivan. So Thursday we'll be there, celebrating the 101st anniversary of the pennant-winning San Antonio Black Aces. They won the pennant for the Texas Colored League in 1919, and also the 100th anniversary of the National Negro League, which was founded by Rube Foster, who's from Calvert, Texas.
Wow.
No, that was a mouthful.
But that's a lot. There's so much history. There's so much history that the African American community has contributed to the nation via the city of San Antonio.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's why I love having you on, because it's a great way to educate the public about a history that most people have no idea how profound and prolific we've been historically.
Yes. And you know, the interesting thing about San Antonio, and this is something that I've learned recently, I'm not from here, but I've worked at surrounding myself in my new position with other scholars and historians, not just the wonderful ones that we have at SAAACAM, but other ones from around the city. And I was really perplexed about this education piece. We just completed a month of education focus, and our education exhibit will be coming online digitally on the 18th of September. But you know, you read a lot, and there's been a lot in the news about the schools here being segregated. And I used to wonder, how did they get that way? And I don't know, 16 school districts in Bexar County, it's like something crazy that I had never, in all my life, I never heard of anything remotely close to that. And it was something that would make me go, Well, then I found out that after Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, how San Antonio was able to keep the city as segregated as they did, as Dr. Van Hoy alluded to, is there wasn't anything on demographics that said, if you're Hispanic, check here. Hispanic was considered white. And if you look at today's demographics, it'll say white but Hispanic. So think about this. In 1940, there were 5 housing projects that were segregated. 2 of them belonged to African American residents. 1 was on the west side. There were 2 Mexican American housing projects on the west side. So that caused segregation there. So when San Antonio touts that it was one of the first cities to segregate the school system, well, how they were able to show that is the schools on the west side. There were either white kids or black kids that went there. Forget the fact that they were Hispanic. Forget the fact that in the Edgewood School District, during that time, the median income of a student was $1,700 a year. The median income, which is how you pay taxes, right? The median income of a student at Alamo Heights ISD was $7,600 a year.
Wow.
So
what a disparity in
I can say
income.
that my schools are desegregated now on the west side because I have white, as in Hispanic kids that go there, and I have black kids that go there, right?
Because the Hispanic kids are being counted as white kids.
And so that meant that this school system was desegregated. Forgetting the fact that everyone that lived over there had this horrific income, and schools had outhouses. They did not have bathrooms. They did not have running water. The kids would have to go get water. It's crazy. So you look at a city like San Antonio that has a lot of, I'm going to say in some instances there is this West Coast vibe in some areas, but San Antonio is Southern. Don't get it twisted. And we're here to uncover all of that history.
I love the hidden history
Mm-hmm.
that you're like that fact. That's an important piece of the, I don't want to say whitewashed, but
You can say it.
that's like when we go back and we look at history and look at history books from when I was a kid, that's not in there.
No, those stories aren't told.
None of that's there.
Mm-mm.
And people just think, oh, everything's fine. Everything was fine there.
Mm-hmm.
And there, we had the same ailments in this community as all of the other communities across
Absolutely.
the United States. Have we done better? I think we've done better in a lot of areas.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have the same issues
Mm-hmm.
that have existed everywhere. And our history is important to be told accurately, and to be preserved accurately, instead of without this rose-colored lens that we like to often pull up history with and say, oh, it was good, it was fine, everything was
Right. I call it the fairy tale. So there's the fairy tale, and then there's the real tale.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back to what Dr. Van Hoy said, a history that is exclusive of any one person is not really, it's not a true history. What it is his story, and it's his story to make him the hero or her the hero, and to make everyone else the villain. And that's not how it is. And I'm thankful that this summer we've seen a glimpse of it, but only a glimpse. People were all at home, stuck
Yeah.
because of a pandemic, which is why we saw George Floyd. Now people are getting out. They're not quite so much in front of their TV. We have a political system that is denying the fact that there are challenges, that there are social injustices. So people are starting to, I think, get desensitized. And I think about, I'm old enough to remember the Vietnam War protests and demonstrations. And my only prayer is that it doesn't get old. Because we've lived it our lifetime. And so now we want other people to see it and to be able to do something about it. We can't make the change by ourselves. We historically are about 10% of the population nationwide.
Exactly.
So it's going to take at least another 50% or so.
That's right. So that means it's going to take people of all hues, people of all ethnic backgrounds, and people of all political persuasions to decide this is wrong.
Yes.
Racial injustice is something that none of us should sweep under the rug. It's something that we should all address because it affects everybody. Anytime you have systemic injustice like this, anytime there is a group that is being systematically oppressed, or that is being oppressed by whatever reasons you think or we know are happening, that affects everyone else. That affects everyone else. You cannot have one group that is not doing well, and I would say that this affects poor people. We have 140 million poor people in this country, and every poor person should be working towards some level of relief from this type of injustice, because the poor are affected more than any other group in this nation. Those that are
Absolutely.
not poor are not under the same. It's a different life if you're poor.
Definitely. And I think Martin Luther King said it best, and I'm not going to quote it as eloquently as he did, but he said something to the effect of, a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that just really needs to be in our forefront.
Mm-hmm.
It's about equity.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not beating up the city that I live in, I'm thankful that we're now trying to look at things from a more equitable lens. I had the privilege of speaking about an issue with small businesses to City Hall not too long ago. And I use this example. I said, so when you're talking about equity, if you give a single woman $2,000 and a family of 10 $2,000, there's nothing equitable about that. Because that single woman could take that $2K and maybe decide she wants to go to Neiman Marcus and buy a dress. Mm-hmm. Whereas that family of 10 can take that $2K and think, maybe I can feed my family for 2 months. Mm-hmm. I said, that's very different.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to say what makes sense. Does she get $2,000 or does she get $500 to feed
Mm-hmm.
for 2 months or something like that? The whole piece of equity comes about when we understand each other's stories. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand my story, if you don't understand my history, then there is no way that you can talk to me about what is fair, about what is just, about what is equal, because you don't have a clue. And you can call it red privilege, girl privilege, white privilege, green privilege, whatever privilege you're living in that keeps you from seeing my plight.
Right.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. It doesn't have, everything isn't about one group. What we're saying is that if one group is diminished, all are diminished.
Absolutely.
All are diminished. So that is why singling out Black lives and singling out Mexican lives is important. That's why it's important. Mm-hmm. Because these are groups of people. Singling out poor people, they are not living the same life as everyone else. And it's important that we address the things that ail each group so that we can make this a better place for all.
Absolutely.
Everybody, we can't have equality for all if we don't address all of the problems that are there.
Absolutely.
And you are listening to On the Record with Tiffany. I want you to come back because our next segment we're going to be talking with Deborah Jarmon, the executive director of SAAACAM, about what's going on and how history relates to today. How do we learn from what has gone on in the past? Because there are some real lessons to be learned. History, there's a reason that we would want to change how we're operating today so that we don't repeat the ills of the past. So come back, grab yourself a drink, get back over here, and keep listening to On the Record with Tiffany.